Hi, everyone. I'm Steven Sigman,
And I'm Mike Messinio.
and this is the Weekly Movie Throwdown, a discussion show where each week we talk about a film that fits into our overall monthly theme. This month is Not So Scary Horror, and we're actually wrapping up this week with a really fun one that is definitely not scary and maybe even isn't horror. It's 1987's The Monster Squad, directed by Fred Decker. And
Whoa,
Mike, I know you have a lot to say about this.
We may throw down right out of the gate. I think this movie is quite scary.
What?
That's right.
What's so scary about it?
We'll talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, let's put a pin in it until we talk about some news stories from the week.
Sure. Just a couple things that I came across. One, I didn't know that Joseph Kosinski, coming off of F1, his next project is going to be a reboot of Miami Vice. I guess he just can't leave Miami Vice alone.
Yeah.
But the talks are that the actors circling it are Michael B. Jordan and Austin Butler, which is, I have to admit, a pretty intriguing cast. If you're going to reboot something that's unnecessary to reboot, if you have two good actors in it, maybe that makes it worth it. I don't know, but that's kind of intriguing. I wonder if Austin Butler will play Sonny Crockett as sleazy as it was before, but we would have to see.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I knew Kaczynski was doing it, but I hadn't heard anything about the casting. So
yeah, so those
that's
two
a
guys
good
are
pair
right now. Yeah, if they can get those two, I think that would be pretty interesting.
I hope they have the go fast boats like they did in Michael Mann's version.
You have to. I think you have to do that. I mean, and obviously he's going to have things that go fast. That seems to be his MO right now. So.
Yeah, really.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, just because we're always talking about technology and things that it's ruining, and the people losing their jobs because of the move towards AI and technology. Well, I came across an article about something that I hadn't thought about, but seems obvious, that one of the other groups of losing their jobs are animal actors. There was an article in the Hollywood Reporter about how animal actors can't find work anymore because it's easier to just add animals in post with CGI than it is to train animals and actually use them. And that just makes me really sad. I mean, imagine Hooch in Turner and Hooch as a CGI animal, or some of the great dog actors, or even the spiders in Arachnophobia. It's like someone had to wrangle all of those spiders. It's not just even about the animals too. It's about the trainers who dedicate their lives to doing this. It just makes me sad. Another way that movies are becoming less real. And that always bothers me, to be honest.
Well, I go a completely different route on this as the animal activist amongst us, because I'm all for animals not being things that aren't what animals do. Animals aren't actors, like Rin Tin Tin didn't want to live a life as Rin Tin Tin. So for me, that's
I
my approach.
do get that argument, and because someone mentioned that to me, but I don't know. I think that the restrictions now on how kids and animals are used is much better than it used to be. So I don't know. I think that a dog would probably enjoy, dogs like to be useful. I think they would have fun. It seems fun to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just makes me a little sad. At least we'll have Air Bud.
Always have Air Bud.
They're making a new Air Bud, and they're casting a new Air Bud as we speak.
Wow.
Yeah, at least golden retrievers will still have work.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about this new movie, Good Boy? It's a horror movie, so I don't know if you...
I've heard about it, but I don't really know anything about it. But I have heard about
it. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to see it because I don't really watch movies with animals in them. But the premise is that this dog is the protagonist, and he can see all the ghosts around the house that his owner, will hear a noise. It's based on a dog staring at a corner or something, and you think well, what are they looking at? Well, this answers that question. It's all these ghosts. And so the dog is kind of a ghostbuster, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but it sounds like a pretty unique premise. And that's something where I don't think you're going to be able to put a CGI dog in there and have it be as authentic as it would be with a regular dog, like a living dog. So that's interesting, I guess.
That's fair. But see, now I come to the opposite side of that, where I feel like horror movies are probably something dogs should not be in. That's an unnatural environment for a dog. I just feel like put unnecessary stress on your animal. I don't know. Who knows, what's going on there.
Yeah, that's true. All I keep thinking about during this conversation is when they're on the Blu-ray edition of Magnolia, there's a whole 2-hour documentary or something, and they interview Jason Robards, like Paul Thomas Anderson does, and he's talking about blowing up frogs in some movies in the '70s and, like, how they just would, like, blow them up. So I guess dogs and even frogs have it a little bit better today than they did in the '70s, but Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah, it's a different time.
Yeah,
See, I guess I was gonna ask if you have some news, and we had a perfect segue because, a movie we're talking about has a wonderful dog performance, but
it's true. We always have that extra news story in
I
there.
know it ruins our segues, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I wanted to mention is potentially good news for us eventually because Spotify has partnered with Netflix to run video podcasts on their streaming service, the Netflix streaming service. So, as I understand it, one of the big ones that at least as it pertains to us is they partnered with The Ringer, which has Bill Simmons and The Rewatchables and The Big Picture. So, it's very like movie related and I think that could be interesting because I wonder if they have the film available to stream and then they would serve up an episode of the rewatchables after that so that you can keep going with it and like hear a conversation about what you just watched. I think that could be kind of interesting, but like you and I were talking before we came on and like nobody really wants to watch a podcast on their TV.
But it's funny though, as we were talking about it just now, as you were talking about it, what I realized is that what Netflix is specializing in, and we talked about this, like last year, I think, which is how they're changing their movies so that they can be on in the background where people don't actually have to watch them. Remember that
Yeah.
they're adding more description to their movies. So
Yeah.
maybe this is a plan by them that they understand that people just have Netflix on in the background. So why not just play the podcast in the background while you're not actually watching it? So maybe it does make sense. I don't know.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean,
It's just part of
maybe you don't
their
even
yeah, it's part of their move towards TV that no one's actually watching. That's just on.
Netflix bringing you radio. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. I actually do watch podcasts sometimes if it's one of the few shows that I kind of subscribe to and watch every or listen to every week. So I don't know. I don't even know what I get out of watching it, but I'll throw it on if I'm working or something. And, I would have a podcast on anyway. So why not just throw on the video of the people talking?
Yeah, it depends for me. Certain podcasts I listen to actually use video, like they have clips and things like that. Especially some news podcasts I'll listen to, and so that makes sense where they're talking about a video that they're playing. So, but I do more listening than watching. That's for sure.
It seems like it's just really trying to take out YouTube, and I wonder if, like, YouTube creators would find a way over to Netflix too,
I don't know.
because I mean, podcasts, I don't know what percentage of YouTube content they are, it's probably pretty small, but it's like a first shot against them, and I think they had a couple of things come over from YouTube recently, shows that ended up on Netflix. There's Miss Rachel's Pantry, I think, is like some kids show that started on YouTube, I believe, and is now on both platforms. But the thing with The Ringer is that they're going off of YouTube altogether. So they're going to lose that whole channel and it's all going to be on Netflix now. So I don't know if
That I
that'll be
mean,
the thing going forward or not.
that I didn't know that. That's a pretty bold move. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's it for news. Let's move into talking about the Monster Squad.
So this to me is a perfect example of the, kind of what I'm looking for with the not so scary movies. Like I think this
Yeah.
is kind of the perfect encapsulation of that, where I disagree with you. I think it's a little scary, but it's also a lot of fun. It's something you could watch with kids, even though there's a couple of objectionable things, but not enough where they won't watch it, but enough where they'll feel like they're watching something that they maybe shouldn't be watching, which is even better because that's what you want as a kid, to feel like you're watching something kind of naughty. So I think it checks all the boxes for me of what I'm looking for.
Did you see this when you were a kid? Like
Yeah.
1987?
Yeah, so I've pretty much been
Okay.
watching this movie my whole life, and it always shocks me, even to this day, like how few people have ever heard of it. Because I talk about it a lot, especially when Halloween comes around. Like I mentioned, it's like the one movie that I'm usually watching on Halloween. Like there's two things that I will probably watch every Halloween, and one is The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and the other is this.
I
And
thought you were gonna say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
don't even go start with that. Um, but yeah, so and I'll always say I watch the Monster Squad, and no one will have even heard of it, it which explains a lot about it. But I just think it's one of the great kind of missed movies, and it's definitely achieved a cult following now, and there's a lot of talk about it on the interwebs, and the people that know it. But overall, it's still very much under the radar. I just wish that more people could see it. I think it's especially, I think it was a movie ahead of its time, and now 30 years later, it works even more so than it did then.
Yeah, I guess I tend to agree with that. I mean, I think, read that there were a bunch of screenings of it at like the Alamo Draft House, and so like movie people are kind of either finding it or just getting to sort of unearth it again and sort of bring it back into the culture. And there's a documentary about it, which we'll probably talk about. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really gaining traction now, what, like almost 40 years later, which is pretty interesting. And it's very much of the 80s. I mean, like, let me give you just a quick rundown of what it is, but it's basically like a group of kids who love monster movies and just are that's like their whole thing. And when the monsters are real, they are the ones who have to sort of come and fight them because they're like everything is at stake for the world. As like the stakes could not be higher in this film for these kids to grab this amulet and prevent Dracula and his team from like there's like a wave of evil. Is that what it was? Like there's a turn of evil that's going to happen in the world.
Yeah, like every 100 years, there's an opportunity either for good to win or for evil to kind of tip the scales and take over. And things would be very dark.
Gotcha.
And it just so happens that they're the only ones that realize this because they somehow get Van Helsing's diary. How it ends up in their town at a random yard sale, who knows? But that's how it goes. And they just so happen to know a guy who's German who can read it to them. I mean, good for us because wow, things would turn bad if they didn't know anybody who spoke German.
Yeah, they're very lucky to have that man in the
Yeah,
town,
a lot of
which
lucky
doesn't seem
breaks.
like a big town,
No, a lot of lucky breaks
you
for them.
know. And that's the thing is like it feels like Goonies meets Universal Monsters basically. I mean, it's very formulaic for the 80s with all of those kid
Yeah,
movies.
so it mixes two things. But yeah, the 80s we talked about, like after ET, there was this huge movement towards movies about kids. And I read somewhere someone calls it, I think it was Collider, maybe they call it the kids on bikes genre,
Yeah,
which is fun.
that's clever.
Yeah, so just this thing of kids getting into hijinks or solving things and seeing things that adults don't. And the 80s were huge for that. And this fits right into that. Obviously, so you have to compare it to the Goonies because the Goonies just feels like the movie everyone thinks about. But what Fred Decker, the director, talked about, and what I always saw immediately too, is that this movie is really Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Like that's essentially what it is. And that's what he was thinking about when he was envisioning it. A little bit of Little Rascals, but mostly Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, because what you have in that movie too, and what this does really well, is that you have the regular people who are the comedy element of the movie. But the monsters themselves are not played for comedy at all. Like the monsters are not played for laughs. Like there's no jokes in the monsters. They are real and they are scary and that plays in its own way, but everything around them is kind of silly because it's kids and that part is played for humor. And that's very much what Abbott and Costello was like.
I'd say that Frankenstein is maybe the outlier just a little bit. I mean, he learns a language that's
That's
like,
fair. That's fair.
he's focused.
That's true, and you have to have a little bit of that. But I mean, the Wolfman is very serious, and Dracula. I have to say, this is probably one of the more sociopathic Draculas that we've seen on screen. I mean, he is like a relentlessly bad guy. I mean, killing indiscriminately, like blowing up kids' tree houses. Like he's no joke.
Yeah, I was at the end with is Phoebe the little sister's name when he like takes the amulet from her. I thought there's no way he's gonna hurt this little kid in this movie, but I mean, he would have totally just like crushed her head or something if
Yeah,
you know. So Yeah, I mean, you might be winning me over on the slightly
Yeah,
scary
I thought
thing. I
that
mean,
I
the
mean, I thought Dracula
Wolfman
was
was
yeah, I thought Dracula was pretty scary, but, it was a funny story about the scene with Phoebe, though, that scene that's, she had never seen him. Well, one of the cool things about this is all of the actors who played the monsters, they did especially Frankenstein, they didn't let the kids see them out of makeup. So they never really saw the actors as actors. They only saw them as the monsters, which helped, I think, the kids stay in the mindset of the movie. But the other part was that the actress who played Phoebe, she had never seen him with the fangs or the contact lenses. So
right.
in that scene where he threatens her and like flashes the fangs and hisses at her, like she'd never seen that before. So they were basically scaring the living crap out of a 5-year-old. And those screams were not fake at all. Like that was her genuine panic about seeing Dracula. So
I mean, you have to go method like that, right? Like, that's a good way to get genuine reaction from a child, I think.
well, at least they didn't shoot a gun at near on set. So that's good.
William Friedkin's Monster Squad. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, this has all the there's so many things in this that are like 80s tropes, from the
Absolutely.
music to the gags to
The
the
montage.
story. Yes, the
Of
montage.
course. One of my favorite montages of all time, I
It's
have to
quite
say.
good.
Yeah, it is
It's
an
quite good.
excellent montage.
I was so happy at the end when they called back to the business cards, because that was the only thing during the montage that I don't think was used again. And it seemed like Rudy knew what he was doing. I mean, he was like
Yeah.
making silver bullets, he's making steaks, and he was effective, but the other kid just made business cards.
Even the letter to the army, though, I love the
That's
payoff
right.
with the army. One of my favorite things.
You think that would happen today? Like, so they would just get a letter and be like, oh, yeah, let's deploy there.
Right now, no. No, I do
Yeah.
not. I do not think the army would respond. Yeah, I don't think
I
so.
don't know.
I have my doubts.
Yeah. They're busy in the Caribbean, I guess.
Yeah. So talking about the Universal monsters, what I find amazing when I started diving into this movie is that I mean everybody knows it's kind of a tribute to the Universal monsters, and that was their plan. So they had actually pitched this movie to Universal, which would make perfect sense, right? But Universal turned it down, and I am shocked by that and think it's really really interesting because what it says to me is that in the 80s, no one understood what IP was. That was not a
Right.
thing that anyone was thinking about. So at that time, the Universal horror movies were kind of at their lowest ebb, I would say. I mean, it was kind of a no man's land period. And so I think to them, like they didn't understand the value of the property that they had. And they also didn't really understand that you could mine IP for money. And so they basically were like, we don't want to be involved in this movie. So that did two things. I think it was a huge error on Universal's part. But the second thing is that it forced the makers of the movie to now make these monsters so that you know they're Universal monsters without actually looking exactly like the Universal monsters so they wouldn't get sued by Universal, which I think is amazing.
I think, it's like the Pepsi of
Right.
Universal, because one of the kids is drinking Pepsi at one point in this, and I was like, "This is a Pepsi movie. It's adjacent to Universal, but it's not Universal." And that feels like an 80s thing to me too. Like, this is like the GoBots of Universal, you know, like it's just kind of adjacent and a knockoff, but you get what it's trying for. They just can't do it. But I think that it kind of makes it better. I mean, I
Right.
would argue that that's part of what makes it cult status now, is that it's not the right
I
thing.
agree in some ways because they couldn't do exactly what the Universal thing was. They had to do their own thing, and I think it led to some fun choices and some things they could get away with that they probably wouldn't be able to do if Universal was involved and kind of running the show from the top down of what you are and aren't allowed to do with their characters. So I agree in some ways that that freedom probably worked for them. Well, I mean, not in the end because no one saw the movie, but in terms of making it, I agree with that. Here's another fun fact for you. The person who was almost cast as Dracula, Liam Neeson had
Yeah.
tested, and they were going to hire him until Duncan Rieger came in and read. But I have a lot of thoughts now about the thought of Liam Neeson playing, and this would have been like a year before he played Darkman. So
Right.
Yeah,
Huh. Y
that's a good
I
way.
kept I kept thinking it was Michael DeBar, the musician and actor. That's who I kept thinking it was until I read about it, but
Really?
yeah, I mean, it looks kinda like him
No, that's fair.
from that time, yeah, but I did read the thing about Liam Neeson, and I also read that Dustin Diamond had a role in this film until he was cut out of it. So, the cast that could have been, imagine that. I don't
Jeez.
think he had any substantial role or anything. I think he was just like a kid selling something or whatever, but still, that would have been interesting. But the kids themselves are like, can you one for one them with Goonies almost? Like they're just basically the same kids, right?
In some ways,
And that
yeah.
goes throughout the 80s. Like
Yeah.
it's just so many tropes that
The
are
80s kid
like,
group is pretty solid. There's the cool kid,
yeah,
there's the talkative, leader kid, there's a fat kid.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's
there's
always a
all of them.
girl that they maybe don't want to be in. I was trying to think of movies that were where the cool kid stands up for the kid who's bullied. And I know there are a bunch of them, but I couldn't think of any that like off the top of my head that play that trope out, but
I
I
mean,
know there are a
besides
bunch of
My
them.
Bodyguard, I guess, which is kind of the
Well, I was thinking about that, and by the way, I'd love to do that on this show because I love that movie. That was a staple of HBO,
sure was.
in the early '80s. But he hires Mike the bodyguard, so it's not
That's a fair
like
point. Yeah, right.
he's sticking up for him, but there are some films where, like, a cool guy just kind of is friends with a kid who gets beat up a lot, and you know what? Snack Shack is kinda like that, where the kid who's in the military comes back and looks out for those 2 kids. That's kind of a off to the side example, but I think yeah, I don't know. All of that is just to say that I was thinking about it when I saw Rudy light a match on the heel of his shoe, and I thought, yeah, this kid's in. Like Rudy really just wanted to be in the treehouse to see this girl who is constantly changing at the window next door for some reason. I was like, how
Yeah.
many times is that young lady gonna change her clothes in front of that window?
So that actually brings me to 2 points that I was gonna make. The first being the Ryan Lambert, the actor who plays Rudy, I think he does a really excellent in this movie because he actually is, the coolness factor definitely works, but he's also got a little bit of playfulness. Like he winks a couple of times, which I find pretty amusing in a
Yeah,
couple of key scenes. He also does two fantastic spit takes, not just one, but
right.
two spit takes. So I mean, the range of work that he does in this movie is pretty broad. And I think he does a really good job. Watching it, for the 100th time. I'm still impressed at his work in this movie. I think he's does a really good job.
He was a regular on Kids Incorporated around this time. Do you remember that show?
I do. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
he was in something like 70 episodes of that. So I guess he was like kind of one of the lead dudes, but I'd completely forgotten about that show until I saw this, which is ironic because I'm in town where I am today to see my niece in a musical version of Beetlejuice. So like I have the young kids singing on my brain, but I had completely forgotten about Kids Incorporated.
Well, two things. Kids Incorporated in my mind was always a poor man's Mickey Mouse Club, but
Sure.
I also like the Kids Bop stuff where kids sing like pop songs is probably my least favorite thing that's ever been done. And I make
Yeah.
sure that my kids have never listened to that stuff. Like if you're listening to the song, listen to the songs themselves. I don't want to hear kids sing "Yeah" by Usher or something. Like I don't want to hear that. It's not what I have no desire for that.
That
Anyway,
is such good parenting.
yeah, you play the original
Truly.
songs. There's no reason for them to listen to children sing songs. Like the whole like radio stations for kids, like Disney Radio, like all of that stuff is an abomination as far as I'm concerned. Like I don't want
Yeah.
to be sitting in a car and listening to Disney Radio because my kids want to hear it. They're gonna listen to what I want to listen to.
Yeah.
First of all,
Good for you.
that's good parenting. Like listen to garbage because your kids want to hear it is not good parenting. I'm sorry.
But don't they just throw on headphones or something and listen to what they want
Well, not
anyway?
when they're little. I mean, you control it. I
Oh,
mean, once
that's
they
true.
turn
Yeah.
13, all bets are off. But up to that point, they're captives. They're your captives in the car. There's nothing, they can do. They have to listen to whatever you play.
Yeah, I kind of remember that. I'm
Yeah.
actually grateful for that experience with my parents because they listened to some cool stuff.
Very much. A lot of the stuff I love were because I was forced to listen to stuff in the car, like, listening to old Motown and doo-wop and things like that, stuff I would never listen to on my own.
Yeah.
I got because I was sitting in the car. There's nothing I could do about it. S
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, and my
But
other
yeah,
part was I think that so this movie ends up being PG-13, and, I don't think it's necessarily because of the horror stuff, although like I said, there are some things, there's some, decent violent stuff that goes on in this movie. And again, I don't think it shies away from that. I think that that's part of what makes the movie work. Like the horror elements are true, and the violent stuff. Like I mean, Dracula snapping necks, and you know,
yeah,
people getting slashed, and the Wolfman getting blown up is just an insane scene. Like that scene is crazy,
yeah.
but
It really was.
it really was.
God.
That's as intense as a scene is in almost anything. So I think it's really well done. And we'll get into the special effects stuff later, which I think has to be talked about. But, what I was gonna say was I think it is the stuff with the sister, like the sexual undertone stuff that I feel like is where they took a misstep and what might partially be why the movie didn't hit the audience that it should have. I think that
Yeah,
it was like a way to make the movie a little more grown up, but some of that stuff was unnecessary. Like, I understand that you needed to talk about, the virgin stuff because it was needed because that's the gag at the end, which works, and that's fine.
right.
But some of the little stuff, even the thing with the picture and all of that, and talking about this, this sister kind of getting around. I think that stuff doesn't age well. Yeah, it worked probably because it was the '80s and a lot of stuff you got away with in the
Yeah.
'80s, but it doesn't play as well anymore. And I think that it would have probably been a broader movie, reach a broader audience without that stuff.
Yeah, and they definitely dropped the F word, the gay slur a few times, which I
Yeah,
was
yeah. But
not
again, that is
keen
very
on.
much an '80s thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that almost can't be helped. Where I know, save your letters, but it's true like in the '80s, and Fred Decker actually even says this in the commentary, where he's like, it wasn't used in a gay way. It was used as just a way to insult people, and it was just casually embraced in that way. And that's just the way that it was.
Yeah.
That's the truth. It doesn't age
Yeah.
well, but that it is true of how it was used. It was just like a new insult that people had that they would throw out. I mean, and most kids didn't even understand the context of that at the time, which were like 10 years old.
Yeah, but it's hard to overlook it when
But yeah, it
you
doesn't I
go back
mean,
and watch
things
it
that don't
today.
necessarily age well. And obviously when I watch this with my kids, those are things I kind of have to point out. But at the same time, they kinda just fly by, like, they don't think about it all that much, like, they already know, especially, their words they're not allowed to say,
Mhm.
and you just throw that in the bucket of words that, no longer work, and, they're just in old movies, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, that I mean, that comes down to the writing, and we should probably talk about Shane Black, who co-wrote this with Fred Decker,
Yeah, he
because
wrote the first draft of this by himself,
Shane
and
Black did.
yeah, Shane Black did, and Decker
Okay.
came in and because it was Decker's idea, but, Black took the first pass. And yeah, you could definitely see even in this the early elements of Shane Black's writing, and it's rapid dialogue, a lot of insults, a lot of silliness mixed with like some genuine feeling and violence. Like that's like the Shane Black. That's the mix. That's what he does.
No Christmas, though.
No Christmas.
That was hard to
If he could have
believe.
figured out a way to work Christmas into a monster movie, I'd have been very impressed. But no.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it definitely did have his sort of hallmarks, and yeah, it's fun. I mean, and what a year for Shane Black, right? I mean, he was in Predator, Lethal Weapon came out, which he wrote, so maybe the hottest year of his career, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So he yeah, obviously he had written this before he wrote Lethal Weapon, and it took a while for this to come out. But Lethal Weapon is coming out the same year. Yeah, it's a big ascension of Shane Black.
And really, that's kind of like this is a 2-year run for Fred Decker, where Night of the Creeps, which came out the year prior, is also sort of a cult sensation now that a lot of people reference, and then coming on to this. So he hasn't directed too many movies, but those two in particular really
So
feel like they've cemented him.
yeah, so I think of this as kind of like a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest thing. I know. So Shane Black and Fred Decker, like at the time, Fred Decker had already made Night of the Creeps, and that hadn't come out yet, so he had a lot of juice. And that's really how he got the Monster Squad made because he said this like you're never as big as you are before your movie comes out. And
Yeah,
so people
yeah,
had high expectations for Night of the Creeps, and so the Monster Squad was basically greenlit, but he brought in Shane Black to help him work on that. And so, Fred Dekker at the time, because he'd already done House as well, which is a movie I love, House.
yeah.
So
Wrote
his
that.
his star was kind of already on the rise, and so he brings in Shane Black. But what ends up happening is Night of the Creeps flops, Monster Squad flops, and then Shane Black writes Lethal Weapon and takes off. And it's almost like you have that transference of power, like at the end of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where
Yeah.
Fred Decker's lobotomized at the end, and Shane Black just ascends. But that transfer of juice, so to speak, kind of happens in '87 because unfortunately the back to back flops stops Decker's career in its tracks, and he has to fight his way back to being able to direct one more movie, which was RoboCop 3, which unfortunately was also a disaster. And that kind of ends his directing run. I mean, it essentially puts him in movie jail, and he's been working as script doctor and whatever else he's been doing, but he hasn't directed a movie since, which I think is a huge shame because Night of the Creeps and the Monster Squad have both become beloved cult hits that I think were both just kind of misunderstood in their time, and I think he deserved better. It's an unforgiving business, but I do think, and we hadn't talked about this before, but I noticed even this with Fred Dekker that as we've been doing Horror Month and we look at the people who have been making these movies and working on them. If you look at all of their credits, almost all of them are connected to Tales from the Crypt at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
And Fred Dekker also wrote more than one episode, I think. I think he wrote like 4 or
Mhm.
5 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, and that's kind of where he ended up. But
Yeah.
so many people, I mean, Tales from the Crypt, not to get off on a tangent, but for those who weren't there and don't remember, I mean, it was such a phenomenon. Like, it was the place where people who loved horror wanted to go, and almost everyone who was anyone is involved in an episode of Tales from the Crypt at some point. I mean, everyone from Ted Danson to Don Rickles to like it's just so many people were in them, and so many people were wrote them. I mean, Zemeckis made a few, and like anyone who was anyone, it was such a big deal, and so many people were in it.
Yeah, it was kind of like the Twilight Zone or something of the '80s where anthology and everybody wants to be involved, and then they made Bordello of Blood with Dennis Miller and kind of put a nail in that
Yeah,
coffin.
they moved into the movies, which was a mistake. That was a mistake. They
Man.
should have left it alone because it was a perfect. I think it was just a perfect bunch of TV shows. Matter of fact, I just bought the complete DVD set a few months
Wow.
ago. I got it really cheap, and I just felt like, yeah, I should absolutely own this because of streaming issues. It's issues like anything. It's actually not on HBO Max or Plus or whatever the hell you call it. It's not
That's
streaming
crazy.
anywhere. So it just felt like something that was worth owning.
Yeah, I might pick that up actually. How many seasons were there?
I think there were like 7 seasons, but some of them were shorter than others and,
Yeah, it
got
was
less
short
towards the end.
seasons. I'm gonna look into that because yeah, we've referenced that a few times, and it always reminds me how good it was.
Yeah, I can't wait to show my son episodes of Tales from the Crypt, but I have to go back and rewatch a lot of them because I know some of them were definitely not appropriate.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that was kind of the beauty of them too. They were on HBO, so it was like you get a little more than you would
Yeah,
get
you
on
never knew what you
CBS
were
or
gonna
something.
get.
Yeah, I kind of love that about it. So we should talk about Stan Winston and the monster effects
Absolutely.
because they're fantastic. I mean, that werewolf is like you said. I mean that's genuinely scary now that I am thinking about it. Like he's a terrifying uh transformation from Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite into this monstrous
See,
wolfman.
everybody thinks of Uncle Rico now. For me, I mean, one, I think of him as in White Lotus, but the other part is the year before the Monster Squad, he was also in Running Scared, which is a movie I mentioned
That's
that I
right.
watched about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Connection with that is that Peter Hyams, the guy who wrote and directed Running Scared,
Hmm.
was actually the executive producer of this movie, and he shot second unit.
Right.
I mean, Peter Hyams has had a pretty long career. He directed I remember him from directing a couple of Jean Claude Van Damme movies. I think he directed The Presidio, he directed Time Cops, like Sudden Death, which is my favorite Van Damme movie, by the way. Sudden Death.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of work, but he was the big shot who kind of helped shepherd this movie along. I think he's kind of the reason it got made and
Yeah.
shot second unit on it. So that may end up being why he got cast in this as the Wolfman because he'd already worked with Peter Hyams in Running Scared. I'd have to think.
Right. And but getting back to Stan Winston, I mean, this guy is like legendary. You know, he did everything from The Thing to Aliens,
Yeah. So there's two
Terminator
people,
2.
and we already discussed one. I mean, there's Rick Baker, who is considered the you know the god of makeup, and Stan Winston, who is slightly different. Whereas where I think that Winston was more about monster effects, and Winston was a little more did a little more alien work, and he did T2, so he did a little more like uh robot stuff. Like it's just slightly different work. But they're both, I mean, pretty much the godfathers of special effects, and
Yeah,
are one in one of none. It's just the
right.
two of them, and then everyone else learning from them.
And Stan Winston actually has a school where you can go and learn how to do what he does. And with everything that's CGI these days, I mean, you still need those effects as well. And I think that's never going to go away. So, yeah, these two guys have just laid a foundation that with everything changing in filmmaking, I mean, that's kind of a thing that's more or less constant. Like you're always going to need that makeup. I mean, there might be computer effects to some degree, but at the foundation is Rick Baker and Stan Winston and what they've taught the people who came after them. So very, very cool to see another Stan Winston film. And
Yeah, and the
even
effects in this
like
movie are excellent. I mean,
they're really,
there's
really
no doubt. I
good.
mean, they're really good, and yeah, don't forget, there's no CGI in this movie. So you're
Yeah.
talking, that vortex is just, they did it old school with the giant, thing of water, and
It
and
looks
put
so
it,
real though.
yeah, and put it on the spin. The miniatures flying through. They use giant fans, which apparently were an issue because Tom Noonan talked about when they did the final scene, like he's getting hit in the head with stuff that's like flying by him because it's not fake. There's just like giant industrial fans blowing everything everywhere.
Yeah. And there were, it opens with, I mean, there's the whole Van Helsing thing, but then Dracula comes out of his coffin and there are just bats clearly on strings, like rubber strings, just kind of hovering in place. And I was like, this is what the kind of movie we're about to watch, which is okay. I mean, I really enjoyed it.
I did love that. On a side note, speaking of Dracula, because he didn't come out of his coffin, he was actually hanging from the rafters. It
Right,
was
right, right,
someone
right,
else came
right.
out of the coffin. But
Yeah, yeah.
what I couldn't figure out, and maybe you can explain this to me, because when he is Dracula at the house, and Dell shoots him and nothing happens. And then he turns into a bat and flies away. And then Dell shoots him from the car and he actually gets shot. So can Dracula only be shot when he's a bat? Is he indestructible when he's actually Dracula? I couldn't figure that out.
Well, maybe you don't need as much protection when you're a bat because the odds of someone in a moving car shooting you in the sky with it while they're driving are pretty low. So maybe
Fair
his
point.
defense shield was down.
Fair point.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and thinking, he hit that bat.
He's a
That's
good
just
cop.
insane.
He's good at what he does. Speaking of, so Dell's played by Stephen Mock. He was a longtime actor who actually was a professor as well. But his son is Gabriel Mock, who is the lead from Suits. So I just thought that
Okay.
was worth mentioning.
Yeah, I can see that. I know you're a big Suits fan.
I am a big Suits fan, so yeah.
Have you finished it? Were you watching it with your son?
No, we didn't do Suits. We were doing White Collar.
White collar.
Yeah, we're not doing
Is there a
Suits. I
difference?
don't think he's not. White Collar is more fun. Suits is not really for kids. Legal dramas aren't exactly.
Gotcha.
Maybe when he's
Okay.
older, we'll do Suits. But
Yeah.
honestly, I don't want to do Suits anymore because now that there was that huge Suits resurgence last year where everybody started watching it. Like I don't want to watch it anymore. That's why I decided
Yeah.
to watch White Collar. I'm not following the
Gotcha.
bandwagon on that one. I was the early adopter of Suits. I don't need to go back and rewatch it.
You were on
Yeah,
board before everybody
I
else.
was OG on the original Suits bandwagon.
I like seeing his partner in this, Stan Shaw, who is like a sensational 80s actor in Rising Sun, which we mentioned last week. So he just has a great run in the 80s. And he's in Snake Eyes as the boxer that takes a fall for Gary Sinise. So really liked him. There's a good cast. I mean, I don't know too many of the people in it, but the people I know are like really solid character actors that show up, like Tom Noonan, who plays Frankenstein. I mean, he's in so many good things, and he's super creepy. So I think he is perfectly cast for that. and, yeah, just a great cast.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing I think about with this movie when you go back and think about it. Oh, well, speaking of just on a side note, I have to say, sorry, I got just a lot of stuff about this movie because I watched it a million times. So it's Dan Shaw. You mentioned that he played the boxer in Snake Eyes, but he was also the boxer in Rocky who took Rocky's locker, if you remember that. That was him.
Oh,
And then he ends up getting cast by Stallone in Daylight, years later.
right,
So,
right, right, Daylight.
I always have to mention a Stallone connection if I can find one.
Sure.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, what the heck were we just talking about when I interrupted with Stan Shaw?
Just how good the cast is,
Yeah,
and
so I was gonna say, I think that the thing about this movie, when you stand back and look at it, which is why it's shocking again that it didn't do well. I mean, it is a very strong cast. I mean, the effects team is phenomenal. These were people kind of at the height of their power. I mean, the director of photography, I think it was his first movie, but I think that it's really well done. There's some beautiful work with light and shadow in this movie as well.
yeah,
I just think you have a
it's
bunch of
nice.
people at the top of their game, and it even looks good. The score is really good. It's a score that has to cover a lot of bases. It has to be scary. It has to be melancholy. It has to hit adventure notes. It has to be silly, and it does all of that. I think the score is something that I actually think about. I just think it's really well done. So yeah, I just think even in terms of the product itself, it's just a good product. I just think it's a good. I've always thought it's a good movie. Just very underrated.
It is. I mean, it's like, it's just like a hidden gem that is starting to see the light of day, but, I'm kind of glad it is. I mean, some of these movies, they have to wait for their audience, and this is one of them. It just seems like people are really latching on with all of these screenings they're doing of it. Um, I remember having toys based on this movie, and I like you and I were talking about that beforehand, and I don't know if they're toys from this Monster Squad, if there's another Monster Squad, because the toys I had, they drove around in a van. Like the monsters had a van, and I think they were like crime fighters. Or I could be completely making this up, but there was definitely a Monster Squad merchandise line. So I
Yeah,
think
I
I'm gonna
have no
dig
memory of
into it
that at
again.
all. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I wish I
it
would have
seems
known.
like it should not have a toy line. I mean, the budget on this is incredibly low, and although that was a time when everything had toys, so
That's true. I mean,
maybe,
Star Wars opened up the floodgates on that one.
yeah,
So we were talking about the cast and forgot to mention Scary German Guy, who is only known as Scary German Guy. He actually does not have a name, and I think that is something in the movie that feels surprising. Where Leonardo Cimino is plays the part, and the reason that I love that, and I remember this even when I was a kid, that I had seen him in V. And he plays
yeah,
a,
yeah,
a prominent role in V, and then when I saw him in this, I was super excited. And he plays a Nazi adjacent thing character again, even though he's Italian in real life, by the way, Leonardo Cimino. But yeah, the scary German guy thing is interesting because they reference obviously they make a reference to the Holocaust thing where he says, I guess you sure know a lot about monsters, and he says, I guess I do. And then you see the Auschwitz tattoo, and I think that is a bit controversial. I think there's some people that really like that, and some people that hate it. And I kind of like it. Like I just think it's at that period of time when we were talking about that more. I think it was nice to kind of ground it in that and the idea that we're dealing with fake monsters, but to almost remind you there are real monsters in the world. And I just always like that. But also having said that, you know, when I watched it with my kid, of course, he had no idea what that was, and I explained to him
yeah.
what the tattoo even was. And some kids may miss it, and that's fine too. You don't really even need to know it. But I think for those that do know, I think it's pretty powerful just to kind of remind you that we're dealing in fake monsters, but there's always real monsters, right?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that took like a tonal nosedive when I saw that because it was just so much heavier than everything else. And I watched this with my sister-in-law, and she was like, "What is this tattoo? I couldn't see it." And I was like, "Oh, it's from the Holocaust." And she's like, "Wow, that's surprising in this film." I was like, "Yeah, it kind of is." But I get it. I mean, I get why it's there, but it just felt like it sunk for a moment there when they
Yeah, I,
showed
I
that.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. And so I said, I think that people definitely fall in one or two ways of it. But what I do think it does is it explains motivation. Like, why on
Yeah.
earth would this guy want to help these kids in any way?
Right.
I think that because you reference the fact that he has lived through true evil and wouldn't, would want to help stop it, in whatever form it takes in the future. That's the only reason he'd get on board. Why would scary German guy like Phoebe like showed up and picked him up? Like, why would he come? Like, doesn't even make any sense. So I think that's the only reason that it works. If you think about it, like, what other purpose would he have? If he was just a random dude, I mean, I don't think he would help out these children in their quest to save the world.
That's another trope from these kinds of movies too, is like the person who's always like perceived as the scary person is the one who's going to help you. Like Home Alone, like the neighbor was so terrifying, but then he's just like a really nice guy and great conversation. And yeah, that was a very much an 80s and like 90s thing.
Another 80s trope. Yep.
There were, I would say they needed more time in this, so that makes sense that they would like slowly pan to the tattoo because this is 88 minutes. And
It's
I
brisk.
think they wanted to cut some more out of it, from what I read or something.
Really.
Uh, there are scenes in this movie like the mummy in the kid's closet. Like, that has no bearing on anything. Like, nothing comes from that scene. So it's like, why is that even there? Other than to see the dad who is just
Oh,
like
that scene though. Yeah. I
ridiculous.
think
Yeah.
it's a great scene.
And he has that uniform of like the white t-shirt and the white boxers. Like he just was like woken up in the army barracks or something. But yeah, that scene is like, boy,
Yeah, and there aren't a lot of even cut scenes for this. There aren't like deleted scenes. Like they didn't really film a lot of extra things. There isn't a lot that ended up in the cutting room floor. It's kind of like what they filmed is what you got because I think because of time restraints and budget restraints, there wasn't a
yeah, the
whole lot of
budget.
extra stuff.
Yeah, when we talk about the budget, it's very surprising just how little this cost. So
Yeah,
I'm
how
interested in,
good it looks considering how little it cost.
yeah, the effects alone are worth
But yeah, the
what the
little
budget
things I
was.
think about even when I rewatch this scene with Dracula where they're in the field and the lightning flashes and like that skull forms in his face. Like I love that
Yeah,
scene.
yeah, yeah.
And the scene
That was
where
shocking.
yeah, and the scene where Dell runs up the steps to catch Dracula and the way that stairway is lit from the top.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
those little things like that I notice now, maybe when you've watched something 100 times, you notice all the little things. And I said that stuff is like genuine art, like people at the top of their game who were trying to make this look like a real horror movie as opposed to just a silly movie. And you can see it in the color palette where the scenes where the kids are just together, it's lit really bright. I mean, they're wearing very much 80s kids clothes, but the scenes with the monsters are completely different. I mean, tonally in terms of how it's lit. I mean, it's two very distinct looks.
I'm glad you brought up the clothing because I noticed one of the kids was wearing a gotcha t-shirt. Do you remember that brand with the little shark dude who had a flag?
No, I don't actually.
Really? Oh
Probably
man.
probably couldn't afford that when I was a kid.
It might have been a skate. I mean, it was like a surf brand, but
If they
like
didn't sell it at
skateboarders
Sears,
wore it.
I would not be aware of it.
They might have.
I
I
bought
don't
all my
remember,
clothes
but
from the Sears catalog when I was a kid. So
I'd forgotten all about that brand until I saw that. I was very excited. Um, you have anything else you want to bring up about this?
yeah, I don't want to. Again, I don't want to be a dead horse. I genuinely love this movie. I've always loved it, and just the fact that other people are starting to come around to loving it, or that we're hearing more about it, makes me happy. But I just wish that more people would see it. I think it deserves to be a Halloween staple as much as the Rocky Horror Picture Show or any of these other movies. I think that the Monster Squad is a wonderful little movie that deserves more eyeballs, especially too because seeing Universal try to reboot, the dark, what was that, the Dark Universe or whatever it
The
was, like,
Dark
yeah,
Universe.
with
Yeah.
their monster, and see how badly they botched that. Just to watch a simple, fun movie involving the Universal monsters is it's just such an enjoyable movie. Taking out the couple of problematic elements, I don't see any reason why you couldn't watch this with your kids, as long as they're probably older than 10, and have a good time with it. Because I still do. I mean, my kids enjoyed it. I think it's a good watch.
I agree. I thought it was super fun, and I had watched it a few years ago, but not. I don't think I. If I did see it before that, I saw it in '87, and I, it didn't really stick with me for whatever reason. But um, it's pretty fun, and I think just in general, like these are the kinds of movies that we need. Like we're always talking about family programming, and This maybe isn't for like 7 or 8 year olds, but it still feels like family accessible in a way. And it's just, it's fun. And it's on Amazon Prime. So it's available.
It's on Paramount
Uh,
Plus as well.
yeah. So there's no reason people shouldn't be watching this.
Halloween staple. If I'm gonna make it my life's goal to make the Monster Squad a Halloween staple because it should be. It's a good time.
Yeah. Just like everybody watches Jaws on the 4th of July, watch
Right.
the Monster Squad on Halloween.
And if your kids want to watch
Exactly.
Scream when they're like 10 years old, like mine does, and there's no reason for that, you don't have to go there yet. Just watch the Monster Squad. It splits the difference.
Exactly. There you
Scary
go.
and scary enough for them, and yet entertaining enough for you.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for the Monster Squad. Let's move on to what we watched this week.
Yeah, I didn't watch much this week, but I did watch one thing that I wanted to mention because, like I've been saying, trying to find PG-13 horror movies to watch, and I came across a movie called Time Cut on Netflix,
Oh,
and it's basically a movie about this girl whose sister gets murdered back in the 90s, and she finds a time machine like you do, and goes back in the past and tries to figure out who murdered her sister and possibly solve her sister's murder. It's essentially the same movie that Totally Killer is, by the way. That movie on
I was going to
Amazon,
say, yeah.
where she goes back to the 80s, only this one she goes to the 90s. And look, you got to take a lot of grains of salt. I don't even understand how the time travel works in this movie at all. It's very confusing. But and the fact that you just build a time machine like you do as the movie goes along. But it was a perfectly fine watch, and I think this is a good example again. This is my son's arguing with me about what horror movies he can and can't watch. And just the fact that he loved Time Cut proves to me he's not ready for Scream. Like, if Time
Yeah.
Cut is where you are, then that's where we'll stay. Like, if you think this is a good movie, yeah, you're not ready for like the serious horror yet because Time Cut is definitely a B-level movie. It's a fine one. It was only 90 minutes. It's fine. But it wasn't. I actually think Totally Killer was probably a more entertaining movie. Maybe because the 80s stuff was more fun than the 90s stuff.
Right.
And also was maybe a little bit scarier, just a hair. But yeah, it was fine.
Yeah. I remember, well, I get it mixed up with Totally Killer because I watch both of them, but I couldn't differentiate between the two at this point. But yeah, there's kind of a wave of these young
Time travel
person
murder
horror
movies. Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Even stuff like, did you start watching the Final Destinations? You asked me about those the
I
other
did.
week.
I watched the first one. I didn't watch the new one yet. I got sidetracked. But
Okay.
yeah, the first one's kind of fun because again, it feels very much like a movie of its time, like a 2000s movie, early
Yeah.
2000s.
Yeah.
Was it early 2000s? Yeah, it was like 2001.
Yeah,
I
it
think.
was.
Yeah, so it was pretty fun.
Well, like Time Cut feels a little younger than that, but it's kind of in that genre of like how now there's stuff like Hard Eyes and, whatever other horror movies came out this year. They just feel like for really young people. Time Cut is definitely that. Did you watch anything else you want to mention?
No, nothing of note, nothing worth talking about. That's for sure.
Okay. So I've been incredibly busy this week doing things with my wife for her. She has this book residency that just wrapped up in Greensboro, North Carolina. So we've been doing events like every day, and I did get to watch my cousin Vinny, which was pretty fun. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I mean, Marissa Tomei is like unbelievable in that movie, so it's very cool. And there are so many character actors in that, like Bruce McGill and Lane Smith. It's like everybody from The Distinguished Gentleman is like in that movie. So it's very fun to see that. But the other thing I watched is this thing that's coming out on American Masters on PBS. So I got to watch this documentary called The Cardboard King. It's a short documentary. So it's like a half hour. And it's about this guy in New York. I want to say Brooklyn. He makes art out of cardboard and he's of Asian descent. So everything is like these figures that are like basically his family, but they're like human size cardboard people. And that sounds crazy. Like cardboard is ridiculous, but he makes it look like wood in a way that I've never seen before. And
Really?
this is directed by Curtis Chin, who did a panel with my wife, and that's how I got to see it. But he wrote a great memoir called "Everything I Learned from a Chinese Restaurant," and he's also a film director. But this thing, it just like blew my mind. He got one of the cinematographers from one of the New York art museums who shoots all of their videos to work on this, and it's just like, I mean, you can't watch it until it airs on PBS, but it's just stunning, and I was just really blown away by it. It's called The Cardboard King, so just keep an eye out for it on PBS if PBS is still around in like 3 months. I think it will be. It just, that was the only thing I got to see really. Actually, there's a documentary about my wife, which I got to watch as well, which was very, very cool. Yeah, it's a short one called Found, and it's all about her journey of finding her dad's bucket list and then discovering herself through doing it. So very, very cool. I mean, I won't lie, I'm like sobbing while I'm watching that. So pretty awesome. But yeah, so those two documentaries are the two that I got to watch this week, and hoping to see more things next week. We're sort of wrapping up our Greensboro leg and moving down south. So I think I'll have more time to actually go and watch things. Definitely planning on seeing Back to the Future when they re-release it on the 30th in theaters. Very excited about that. So that's probably what I'll talk about next week. But yeah, that's it. That's it for this week. Next week we start a new month, and we're still hammering out the details, but it's November, so it's going to be noir centric, whatever that means. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We had a good time talking about noir films last year, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. So yeah, please do come back and join us next week. We'll see you then. So long.
As always, thanks for listening to the weekly movie throwdown. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for even more from us, visit moviethrowdownpod.com or connect with us on social media. We're Movie Throwdown on Letterboxd and at Movie Throwdown Pod everywhere else.